Welcome, everybody. Happy Earth Day. I hope you chose to join us just to celebrate Earth Day and all the bounty that nature provides all of us and all beings. Um, we're here today to really focus on really actionable things we can all do in the realm of climate change. We have great speakers here today, but before I introduce them, I just wanted to, again, thank everyone for coming and let you all know that this webinar is the product of a collaboration between the APGA education community, which is dedicated to really providing professional development for garden educators, and the PLACCE program, which is Plant and Climate Change Education, which is a collaboration with the U.S. Botanic Garden and APGA.
But to get an initial idea of some of the work happening within our plants and climate change education cohort, I am joined today by our guest moderator, Star Witten from Trees Atlanta. Star is going to share with you a little bit about the educational programming happening at Trees Atlanta, which has a lot of relevance to today's topic of connecting urban forestry and climate change education. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to Star, who is the Education Senior Manager with Trees Atlanta, as well as a participant in our PLACE cohort. Thanks so much, Star, for being willing to share a little bit about your work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily, for the introduction. I'll kind of jump in and get started. So can everybody see my screen okay? Awesome. So my name is Star Witten. I'm the Education Senior Manager here at Trees Atlanta. Trees Atlanta is a nationally recognized nonprofit organization, and we're dedicated to protecting and improving Atlanta's urban forests through planting, conserving, and educating. So the way that I tell kids when I'm talking about Trees Atlanta's mission statement is we plant a whole bunch of trees in and around the city of Atlanta. We try to protect those trees that we planted and the trees in the forest that we haven't planted that have been here already. And we also try to educate the public on why it's an important thing to have a healthy, biodiverse urban forest ecosystem here in Atlanta. So I think there's a lot of really cool intersectionality between Trees Atlanta and urban forestry initiatives. Kind of jumping into that just a little bit. So Trees Atlanta and urban forestry kind of go hand in hand. Some interesting and pertinent things I think that we're doing at Trees Atlanta are going to be as follows. So first of all, we have our Urban Forestry Career Pathways program. This is an incredibly exciting opportunity we've been doing for the past few years. So the Urban Forestry Career Pathways program is funded through the Inflation Reduction Act, so that USDA grant that got divvied out a few years ago. So what we did, our proposal was accepted, and what we do is we provide job training for young adults like 18 to 25 who want to enter into the green workforce. What that looks like is young adults are able to acquire entry-level positions at Trees Atlanta, work with us in little cohorts for a period of several months, and we prepare them for green collar careers and teach them a little bit about urban forestry careers in the future. So that's an incredibly exciting thing. We're looking forward to continuing that, but that is all thanks to that really big USDA grant through the Forest Service and through the Urban and Community Forestry Program. So another thing that we're doing with urban forestry is going to be our youth tree team. That's our high school youth workforce development program, and that's kind of like U4 Light. What we do is accepted applicants into that youth tree team program come on board at Trees Atlanta in tech positions, and they kind of have a tasting menu of all of the different aspects of what it is like to work at Trees Atlanta over the summer. They'll jump in and do some tree planting. We jump in and do forest restoration programs, which is like invasives removal, replanting with native species, and that as well as like some professional development skills, financial literacy courses and stuff like that. So that's a really big, we also have people from Georgia Forestry Commission, Georgia Forestry Foundation coming and working with these youth tree team populations to help them get a little bit more prepared, get a foot in the door for what it's like to work in the green collar career field here in Atlanta. And we also just, and by and large, just like as a whole, Trees Atlanta is kind of like a green career community engagement hub. We offer lots of different adult education and youth education programs at the Trees Atlanta Candida Treehouse throughout the course of the year. We have lots of speaker series. We host events, we host panel discussions about urban forest and tree planting initiatives here in Atlanta. We work with and host ISA training classes and workshops. We kind of host those continuing education units as well. That's Trees Atlanta by and large, just in general, kind of getting a little bit more specific of why I'm kind of here today talking to y'all. My pride and joy, my passion, my driving passion is youth and family education. So how youth education at Trees Atlanta kind of intersects with urban forestry is going to be through our in-school programs and through our non-school informal education programs like our camp programs. Both of those in-school programs and camp programs are going to be partially funded through either like city contracts with the city of Atlanta or with various grants, including the Georgia Forestry Foundation, which is the nonprofit arm of the Georgia Forestry Commission. Our in-school programs are all standard aligned. They do environmental education programs. Lots of our education programs kind of tie in some urban forestry concepts. We talk about forest products. We do some paper making while doing camp stuff. We'll talk about like a developmentally appropriate ways to talk about green collar career fields and all that. We talk about healthy working forests. What forest products come from, or like all of the different products that we use in a classroom, how those are forest products. From a camp perspective, same kind of thing. Every single week of camp not only highlights a different ecological portion or ecological theme when it comes to the Atlanta's urban forest, but we also kind of highlight a specific urban forestry career path that students and campers can kind of choose to learn a little bit more about. That's also going to be partially funded through grants that are coming from Georgia Forestry Foundation. So very, very excited about that. That is kind of enough about how Trees Atlanta and urban forestry connect. I am very, very excited to talk about Trees Atlanta's PLACCE project. So that's the Plants and Climate Change Education program. So what we have created is a project called Project ACER. I'll talk about that in just a second, but you can see it's housed in our in-school programs and our field trip programs. So just kind of like going back over that. So we were very, very excited to be accepted into the 2024-2026 PLACCE cohort. What we did was we tasked ourselves with developing and implementing a climate change focused high school centered education series that's utilizing the Atlanta Beltline Arboretum, which is the longest linear arboretum on the planet, in an attempt to kind of try to quantify the ecosystem services of all of those accession trees on the Atlanta Beltline. And there's 14,000 of them and growing every year. We're trying to showcase precisely how our urban forest here in Atlanta is helping to mitigate the effects of climate change. And what that looks like is a 3-class series. So first class is inside of the school, where we're introducing students and teachers to the concept of what an urban forest is and what ecosystem services are. That second class is where all of these high school students come on a field trip to Trees Atlanta. We take them out on the Atlanta Beltline Arboretum. We teach them how to take some tree measurement data. They're going out and measuring all of these trees. And then once they have that data, we're going back into their classroom and we are inputting all of those tree data or the tree data into a program called iTree, which I'm sure that a lot of people are very, very familiar with. But iTree is going to calculate a sum total of all of the ecosystem services of all of those trees. And then we take that data, we interpret and analyze from there, and then we're helping create an action plan for the future. So this is very student driven of like, where do we go from here? How is this going to affect our community? How can we affect positive change in our community? So what we wanted to do with this was definitely wanted to be hands-on experiential learning. We definitely wanted to have it focused on urban forestry community science with a special emphasis on data collection. We also wanted it to be 3-dimensional learning and like NGSS standard aligned as well. So the results of this were awesome. Our pilot program, or our pilot year this past year, students were able to help us measure 298 trees. So we had 286 students that we partnered with, 18 different classrooms, 5 different schools. All of those students helped us measure all of these trees, and we were able to pull some ecosystem services reports for all of these trees on the Atlanta Beltline. And you can see that those students helped us calculate the exact total of like money being saved just by having these trees in our urban forest ecosystem, which is very, very exciting. And they collected a lot of data for us, and we're excited for the future. So kind of moving forward, the impact of this. So not only did we want to collect data, we also just wanted to connect people to the urban forest because that's how we spark passion and action moving forward. We did that through the Atlanta Beltline Arboretum. We also wanted to close a high school programming gap that we've seen in our education programs. So Project ACER was helping us to meaningfully engage with these older level learners. We also just straight up wanted to utilize iTree to help calculate all of the quantifiable ecosystem services of these trees. And we also wanted to not only take this data, but help communicate it out to the larger public. We've been able to do that just a little bit at Trees Atlanta in this pilot year, but we're looking forward to even more public communication about why this is so important to do in the future. So that's what our project ACER was and our PLACCE project in a nutshell. And I forgot to say that ACER is an acronym. So Atlanta Canopy Education and Research. It's also the genus for maple, which I thought was a very nice little play on words. But that's what I got for y'all. That's how Trees Atlanta is kind of like intersecting with the urban forest thing here. And that's how we are participating in PLACCE. So without further ado, I'd love to go ahead and jump in and do some introductions for our main speakers here. So I have met these people very recently, but just because I don't want to butcher anything with my words, I'll kind of read what I have here about our two wonderful presenters, and then I'll kind of hand it off to them. But first we have Meg Hanna. So Meg is the Director of Urban and Community Forestry for Canada at the Sustainable Forestry Initiative, or SFI. She's working with a network of urban and community forestry leaders to establish the new SFI Urban and Community Forest Improvement Program. Part of her work involves promoting certification to the SFI Urban and Community Forest Sustainability Standard with municipalities, indigenous communities, underserved communities, healthcare institutions, school campuses, and corporations. Meg's also supporting the SFI Career Pathways Program in Canada to increase green job opportunities for all in the urban forestry and forestry sectors. Very excited to learn a little bit more about that specifically. Our next presenter is going to be Jackie Stallard. Jackie is the curriculum advisor and network lead for Project Learning Tree. Very excited to hear a lot more about Project Learning Tree. Jackie oversees the next generation of Project Learning Tree's pre-K through 12th grade environmental education materials, as well as other instructional materials and resources. She's also directs strategic alliances and advances curriculum implementation with other environmental education and sustainability resources. Providers at the national level, Jackie presents and exhibits Project Learning Tree's curriculum and SFI programs and education conservation conferences across the United States. So very excited to hand this off to them and learn a lot from them. I'll remind everybody that as people kind of develop questions that they might want to ask in the future, go ahead and try to utilize the Q&A feature of Zoom, and we'll be scoping that out and pulling those questions. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to our presenters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Star, for the warm introduction, and thank you to the folks at the American Public Gardens Association and the U.S. Botanic Garden for hosting us in this plants and climate change education conversation with PLACCE. So what we would love to offer today is a conversation about planting the seeds of urban forestry in climate education, and I'm just going to get a thumbs up screen check to make sure everybody can see us and hear us and ready to go on this journey together. So already have a great introduction. Thank you so much for that. I will share that I'm a longtime APGA member, an ISA board certified master arborist, and just overall very enthusiastic about urban forestry. And later on in the presentation, Jackie will join us and share her passion about environmental education. Now, we would love to know more about you throughout this journey, this 45 minutes of time that we have together. And this will be an interactive session with 6 opportunities to interact with us. So we do encourage you either grab your phone, your tablet, and your device, grab that QR code and meet us there. If you're joining from your computer, I've popped the link and the session code in the chat. And as we go through those opportunities, you will have those instructions at the top of your screen as well. So we're looking to hear more about your perspectives, and in the chat, if you'd like to quickly share who you are and where you're joining us from, if you'd like to just type in those details, we're always appreciative to know more about the communities that we collaborate with and that we serve. And because we are focusing on place-based interventions and education and getting to know each other, I want to take the opportunity to acknowledge the land that I share with nations here up in Canada. I'm joining from Jojagi, or Montreal, the ancestral unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka First Nation and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And across the team at SFI and Project Learning Tree, we share the land with many Indigenous nations and communities. We're committed to building forest-focused collaborations that recognize and respect Indigenous peoples' rights, as well as their traditional knowledge, relationships with the land, enduring leadership in forest stewardship, and responsibilities to future generations. So what is our time going to look like together over this 45 or 50 or so minutes? We're going to take some of those engagement opportunities to get to know each other better and better understand your realities and how you're advancing urban forestry or where those opportunities are. I will then go on to present some higher level concepts and questions of how you can frame potential initiatives in urban forestry. And this is really about planting the seeds of urban forest care in everyday climate action. I'll then share some tangible resources and examples of how we can move from tree planting to inspiring the long-term stewardship of the trees and green spaces around us. I'll then end with a nod to our lifetime of learning with trees, of how we plant those seeds of urban forestry and climate education, and how we watch those spaces and the people who care for those spaces flourish and thrive. That's when I'll hand it over to Jackie Stallard, who will present more on Project Learning Tree, PLT resources for teaching and engagement featuring trees. And then Star and the group will then bring us back and host us for an interactive Q&A. And I do want to acknowledge and say hello to all the folks joining from all over the United States, New York, Texas, Chicago, Medellin, DC, Virginia. So we're just really happy for this diversity of points of view and geographic areas today. So our first touch point. Would you say that urban forestry is part of your organization's work? If you're representing a nonprofit, a botanic garden, we're starting to get some answers come onto the screen. This is fantastic. I do see that we have horticulturists joining us in the chat, so I assume that caring for trees is very much going to be part of your mission. So we'll give folks a bit of time to log in, to join us, and to let us know. So far, the majority is yes. That's fantastic news. And we're looking forward to planting those seeds and growing those trees more in depth with you. We have some no's and we have some I'm not sure. So I do appreciate your honesty. I think that there's going to be something for everyone in this presentation. You may, after this presentation, reflect and see things a bit differently and maybe see some opportunities of urban forestry happening, or be able to plant new seeds of your own in your organization. So we've got 20 folks on with us. 13 have answered, but we're already in that majority of 9 yes, 3 no, and 1 not sure. So let's continue that journey together. And thank you so much for your answers. So let's qualify our terms before we get started. When we refer to urban forestry, we really mean the pursuit of planning for, planting, caring for, and managing trees and green spaces where people are. So where we live, work, play, gather, and connect with nature. And while the term may lead us to believe that these trees are in dense urban downtown city centers, urban forestry is applicable across a wide range of land use types, everywhere from residential and institutional properties to suburban areas to rural and peri-urban areas in the wildland urban interface as well. So we're going to look at urban forestry as a very broad and a multidisciplinary domain. This involves diverse groups of folks, from everyday people who may see or not see trees, and then the forest and garden professionals that support the growth of these trees and the care of these spaces, including arborists who are often aloft up in the trees working on them, but gardeners and horticulturists as well. We have researchers and scientists conducting research, experiments, gathering data to inform our best management practices and our decisions with trees. We work with partner professions, architects, planners, builders, folks across the gamut of range of organizations, including NGOs and professional associations like APGA and community groups like Trees Atlanta. We work with rights holders and landowners that have a connection to the land, and this is really important as we encourage that stewardship, and especially with students, the next generation who may be influencing and carrying forth some of these important decisions when it comes to trees at proximity to people. And one of the first seeds that I'd like to plant is trees where we are the difference that we can see and that we can feel. So when we take a walk in the spring under some flowering crab apples in a botanical collection, or if we're on a busy commercial streetway and there's a small, oasis smack dab in the middle of a street, a sidewalk, a driveway, a sign, lighting, utilities, and subject to those constraints. Or even if we're taking part in an activity that gathers folks around trees. This central right image is actually a tree tour walk that I participated in Trees Atlanta when SFI was visiting Atlanta for our annual conference 2 years ago, and leading a tour across this beautiful beltline starting in Piedmont Park. And, lastly, trees can also be a feature, a focal point, that this is very much behind the philosophy of public gardens, making collections available to folks, but really enticing them to discover more about science and nature through beauty. And I think this is a fantastic example of an autumn purple ash planted intentionally in the middle of space where people gather, and tells an important story of how trees can be threatened to, by threats such as emerald ash borer recently coming onto the landscape here in British Columbia. And in my journey, and the lens that I'll share with you today, is I believe that trees are the difference that we can not only feel and see, but we can teach as well. I started in urban forestry 20 years ago as part of a summer job, and it grew into something much more. So that observation of working with nature, observing the seasons, adapting my approach to the constraints around me, fostering a curiosity to learn more, and thanks to mentorship and career pathways, realizing that there is a viable career in caring for these spaces. That took me to the municipal sector, where I worked on caring for trees, administering contracts, eventually going on to supervise and support teams in parks and green spaces management. And I would go on to pursue learning part-time studies to be able to grow in that career and learn more and better equip myself to take on some of these challenges and make solid decisions. Through that learning experience, there's the connection, not only the connection to my space around me, but connection to other folks who feel really driven by this work, and how that leads to collaboration, participation, and action, and has instilled in me over time this sense of long-term stewardship, something that I've carried over through over a decade of volunteer service, 8 years experience at the Montreal Botanical Garden, teaching arboriculture and urban forestry with the University of British Columbia, and now finding myself at SFI, where I've been for the last 2 years. And happy to elaborate on any of that in the QA about my career journey, but just giving you the sense of the lens that I take when approaching how we incorporate urban forestry into climate action. Speaking of which, this is our second opportunity to engage. So I would like to know from the folks representing different organizations and groups, what is one way that you're already connecting trees to climate change education? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Maybe you're not sure. Maybe you see an opportunity. If anybody is conducting an event, working with specific groups and individuals, inviting folks to the site to appreciate your trees. If there are any ways that you're connecting trees to climate change, I'd love to know about it. So this is a short answer one, and I'll just leave a minute so folks can get situated. And I do hope it's working. Wonderful. So starting to get folks populating as they're logging in and dropping in. So offering programming about District of Columbia or DC trees, and invite local tree organizations to table on site for specific programs. So kiosks, outreach, information, Trees Atlanta's PLACCE project, which was just presented earlier with the ACER initiative, absolutely. Bringing people to the garden to observe blooming times, leaf drop, leaf changes, observing the phenology of how trees grow and develop, and how that shifts as seasons shift. Nature walks, Absolutely. Looking at microclimates close to trees, studying their impact on the urban heat island effect, fantastic. Um, Involving children, observing trees, again, looking at those seasonal shifts, tree identification, contemplative forest walks. These are all steps in the really positive direction to connect people to nature through the power of trees. Thank you so much for sharing. And last one here, another short answer, so I'll give you the time. Do you see an opportunity to strengthen this connection for the folks who've shared? Maybe it's about expanding your audience, leveraging different media and resources and materials, maybe trying different approaches, integrating other disciplines into your work. I'm curious if you're already thinking about opportunities to strengthen the connection between trees and climate education. All right. High school programming emphasizing trees, the connection to mental well-being. So absolutely connecting the dots when it comes to public health and individual wellness. Definitely. There's social cohesion and all that good stuff in there. So bringing urban conservation science staff, more hands-on science, data collection, and involving, K to 12 up to middle and high school students, super important. There's an opportunity to make this more accessible and equitable to community members that have been historically underserved and underrepresented. Absolutely. So how do we work with communities where they are with their priorities, their interests, their curiosity, and craft activities that respond to that while opening up new pathways of understanding? Thank you so much. We'll speak to these throughout the presentation. Last one, super easy. Do you know us? Are you familiar with Project Learning Tree or PLT or any of our resources? Our logo's there in case you need a jog of your memory. So we're getting some yeses, more yeses than no's. So that's fantastic news. And for the no's, we've got you. We'll make sure that you have the appropriate information on our programs. So, oh yeah, I'll go. Yeah, so we're about 2 to 4, 4 to 8. Okay, maybe half. Maybe we're getting into an even split. But yeah, this gives us a great prompt of how we can steer the presentation. So thank you for sharing that as well. Let's get into it. Who's SFI? Who's PLT? So SFI, the Sustainable Forestry Initiative, we're actually a binational nonprofit. We collaborate across the United States as well as Canada, where I'm located. We envision a world that values and benefits from sustainably managed forests, and we make that vision come to life through our mission. Our mission aims to advance sustainability through forest-focused collaboration. We do this through 4 interconnected pillars of work, standards that I'm a part of, and I'll briefly speak to sustainable forest management standards. We work in the forest product sector as well. We work in conservation science and research and granting for landowners to apply science in the field. We work in community, instilling positive change for communities and advancing important work like Indigenous relations and reconciliation in Canada. And fourth, we'll be speaking in greater detail to environmental education. Project Learning Tree is a separate organization, but an initiative of SFI, has been in our network since 2017, and PLT's goal is to advance environmental education, forest literacy, and career pathways using trees and forests as windows on the world. And Jackie will speak to that in greater detail in just a bit. So what are the seeds that I can plant with the background and the lens that I bring to this conversation and the experience coming from municipal urban forestry, botanic garden experience, NGOs, and volunteer engagement? Well, urban forests in everyday climate action, the first seed that I want to plant is planting is important, but planting is only one part of a holistic range of actions that we can take. Tree planting is visible. It provides an instant result of a stem in the ground and a mulch ring around a plant that we're going to water and protect. But to really get the long-term benefits of climate action and quality of life is making sure that those trees mature, they become large and healthy, and provide a number of ecosystem benefits to our community, some that we've already mentioned prior to this talk. An example here of what's happening in public gardens. This right-hand photo is coming from Auckland Botanical Garden all the way in New Zealand with their climate action trail. Stop 6 actually focuses on planting trees. And yes, before we have any trees, we need to plant them. And this conversation is going to be about the importance of that, But what happens next? And public gardens sit at a very unique opportunity at the intersection of science, practice, and purpose. So the scientific research, often by in-house scientists and university collaborations, that are going to observe how trees grow in the landscape, how to identify them, how to care for them, and how that will influence practices and the work that garden professionals like horticulturalists and arborists complete, and how that rolls up into a greater purpose, often associated with science, conservation, research, education, and engagement. And trees can be a very important part of that. So as we talk about purpose, a couple of questions or prompts that I want you to think about as you consider developing activities or maybe looking at new activities and resources that you're advancing is, how do we keep that real grounded connection between people and trees? You may want to ask yourself, how do we feel in the presence of trees? Simply being in your space, the beauty, the calm, the restorative and mental health benefits that they provide, as simple as a contemplative, self-directed walk through your garden. Or maybe it's a facilitated activity. So you can ask, how do we feel from an intentional experience with trees? Whether it's a citizen science, tree ID or biodiversity monitoring project, community cleanup, or maybe integrating art and other disciplines into a mutual appreciation of trees. And if the circumstances allow, perhaps you can take folks to places where there are less trees, a parking lot, a paved surface. How do we feel in the absence of trees on a hot summer day? These can help stimulate that reflection and make trees and their intersection with the climate around us a very essential part of lived experience. Urban forest through a climate lens, the science behind it. This might be one of those screens you want to screen cap. We'll make sure that you have access to this presentation. But I think kind of an important, maybe more content heavy part of this presentation is, what lens can we look at climate change, climate action, and where trees fit in? We'll often see two buckets: mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation being the large-scale effort to address the root cause of rampant carbon dioxide levels. I want to say a shout out to the National Network for Ocean and Climate Change, or NOCI, that had a wonderful presentation in 2023 as part of PLACCE, and they do an excellent job at explaining this difference between regular and rampant CO2. And what I want to nod to here is, as humans, we put more carbon into the world through our activities, and that has an effect. And often we look at mitigation as a way to address the root cause, either by preserving the trees, the soil, and the ecosystem around our trees that as carbon locked in, or by planting trees to sequester that carbon and increased forest cover where there hasn't been forest before, or maybe where that forest was removed and can be reintroduced. We can also design and manage the built environment with an intentional cohabitation of trees and intelligent design to reduce the demands on energy like heating and air conditioning, and therefore reduce carbon emissions. But mitigation is a large-scale problem. It's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom of climate action. Often mitigation seems very much larger than us and what we can do. And while it's important not to ignore mitigation and how we want to understand it better, I do think that public gardens are well positioned to also shift focus to an adaptation lens. Whether we acknowledge climate change or not, one thing that's very real and around us is we have storms, wildfire, drought, tornadoes, and other risks associated with climate. They happen every year in one region to another. And how do we adjust to those climate-related risks? One way of doing this is preserving the mature and healthy trees that we have, or looking at intentionally planting trees to provide relief for urban heat, to address air pollution and augment air quality, and to address biodiversity loss. So preserving what we have does provide the most important return, but there's also the opportunity to plant. Public gardens have teams that care for trees and can show the best science and practice possible to care for trees, like providing irrigation during drought, designing space that's productive and conducive to tree growth with appropriate rooting volumes and companion plantings, and fostering that understanding of how trees grow. We can design space to manage stormwater. We can select species adapted to our current and future climate challenges, and many gardens are leading the way in climate-adapted species selection for things like heat, drought, and pests. And I would even say, and I think APGA would agree, that disaster readiness response and recovery is an important work of the public gardens as well, and something that we can set people up to understand better through public garden practice. So whether we're looking at mitigation, adaptation, or a combination of both, public gardens integrate these concepts into the research that they share and the practices in the care of space around them. They show how they respond to climate risks and demonstrate actions visitors can take in their own communities. So urban forest practice, couple of things I want to share here is we can share what we plant, what we plan for, how we care for plants, what we observe, what we learn, and what we share. And some examples are the way that we protect trees in construction and development projects, how we plant trees to replace. In the corner here, in the right corner, we have an alignment of ash trees that have been proactively treated against emerald ash borer for over a decade, and a new alignment of climate-adapted biodiverse plantings with the proper care, protection from mower damage, use of urban wood, reclaimed wood for these pickets, and care such as preventative pruning, weeding, watering, mulch. And we have examples such as the southwest landscape of Northern Water, just outside of Denver and part of last year's APGA conference, showing folks not only what we're planting, but how we can do that to respond to constraints. So I'm curious, I've already heard a little bit of this from Star's presentation, but on a ranking scale from 1 to 5, 5 being you're unlikely to both implement and share these practices, and 5 being you're implementing, you're sharing, you're growing, I'd like to know which tree-related initiatives you're sharing with your guests, whether it's working with climate-adapted tree species selection, climate-adapted site design, preparing for things like drought, heat, floods, etc. Tree and plant care practices for optimal growth, bridging the gap between staff, volunteers, and the public. Monitoring and management of new pests and diseases, maybe a fun sentinel program. Tracking and sharing ecosystem benefits provided by trees. And preparing for responding to severe climate events. And if none of these are speaking to you, but there are other tree-related initiatives, feel free to put them in the chat. And we're just always curious to see what folks are advancing. So out of the responses that we're getting, folks are leading the way. It's some 4.3s. This is great to see that you're caring for trees for optimal growth and development, and you're sharing that. Organizations are looking at climate-adapted tree species selection, and I know there's lots of gardens that are advancing this work. So it's really reassuring to see, and hopefully this is providing some food for thought for folks who haven't considered these initiatives before. So gardens are about reframing successful tree planting. I think in urban environments, it's often a tough place to be a tree, whether it's by the practices that they're subjected to, the lack of water or rooting space, the gamut of all these challenges. Public gardens offer an alternative. We can interpret how to get trees growing in the right place where we need them the most and how we can design to accommodate that. So from planting to long-term stewardship, 3 questions I ask in an arboriculture class that I often give. It's part of the syllabus, and I think it's also useful to ask these questions, and Jackie will share some resources that reinforce this, but we can look at how do trees grow and develop? How do urban conditions and climate risks challenge the way trees grow and develop in our environment? And what can we do about it? Whether it's as professionals, volunteers, students, young folks pursuing green careers. And what I've added here is a 4th thing for this conversation is when we do all of that and we intentionally care for trees, how do they make a difference in our community? I think that these are some important questions that we can answer through our work. And for public garden professionals and managers, SFI can help with this resource. We have a freely available standard with 16 objectives across critical areas like climate smart management, biodiversity conservation, and community participation. And this is a document that can be used as an education tool, a planning tool, and even advocacy to support the work that you're doing. So while this could be subject of its own conversation and presentation, this just gives you a range of the 16 objectives across the standard. The standard, as I said, is available for consultation, sharing, and downloading, but it shows the full spectrum and defines what sustainable urban forest management is, what are the ingredients, and included in the indicators of our objectives provide some insight on what you can leverage in your community. So how urban forests are meeting the challenge of an adapting climate and change and climate risks. If we take an example from our first certified organization, York Region up in Canada is facilitating the coexistence of trees in the built environment, integrating trees into rapid transit corridors. They're implementing a young tree care program for trees after they establish with their inventory, and they're providing equitable access to trees in green spaces with access to their forest tracks, accessible trails, all available from public bus stop points, and really leveraging their communications to make that opportunity known to the public. And what are public gardens doing in the here and now? I think your cohort is the best space to unpack and talk about this. Tomorrow, the University of British Columbia Botanical Garden will be bringing folks to their space to engage in in-person climate conversations. On a physical side, at the Montreal Botanical Garden, where I've worked, we actually have structures that show visitors how trees grow and adapt to their environment. And this is something that can be self-guided and contemplative. And on the online side, a future PLACCE cohort member, UC Davis Arboretum in California, actually has resources online with practical advice and plant lists for gardeners in that specific region. And I'm sure with this work that you'll be doing, you'll be able to advance and collectively come up with solutions amongst yourselves as well. So that's where I'd like to leave it as I hand it over to Jackie. Project Learning Tree, as I said, is an initiative SFI, and we support a lifetime learning with trees across generations, starting at the center, the pith, the young tree with those 1 to 6 years old experiences, those formative and positive experiences with trees, moving across childhood, K to 12, to supporting young folks, emerging professionals and students, and then moving on to support educators like yourself in climate change education and featuring trees. So I'll let Jackie share those perspectives and resources in her part of the presentation. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Meg. What a fabulous introduction. I'm so happy to be with all of you today and glad to hear about half the people online have heard of Project Learning Tree. I will say PLT, and I use acronyms when I talk, so if you don't know what they are, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I truly believe that. Please put that in the chat. We already talked about the PLT goal, but I want to move through my time with you today in these 3 content areas of our work. So I'm going to move through these 3 pillars, beginning with environmental education. We're going to move through some forest literacy resources and then to career pathways. And my job is to just give you as many resources as possible. We will follow up with a handout with nice links, and I have friends here who are going to be dropping them into the presentation along the way. So I hope you walk away with many tools in your toolbox this afternoon. Next. Just some by the numbers. This is in the year 2025 alone. It's really important for us to be able to measure our success and document our work. So I don't need to read all these numbers to you, but we do work with educators. We reach this 1.6 million students annually through these professional development events and our 52 statewide network of partners. We do have some international partners as well. If that's something you're interested in, I'm happy to chat about that offline or in the QA. Next. So PLT is founded on a pretty meaningful philosophy. It really was born out of the first Earth Day, so it's so wonderful that we get to be with you on the 2026 Earth Day, and it really moves through this continuum with students. So thinking about initial awareness of environmental issues, it's really getting them outside. It's getting their hands dirty. It's getting their feet wet. You might not have access to a forest, but what do you have just outside your home? It might be a single tree. It might be a vacant lot, but just getting out there and starting some of those explorations and moving that awareness to content knowledge. And so we provide background information for educators to really be able to be comfortable in conveying environmental concepts to students. Then the second part is really the ask. It's challenging young people. This is your responsibility. What can you do to take action in your own backyard, at your school, at your community to really make a difference in those in terms of those measurable outcomes and those numbers that I talked about earlier? Next. And again, we've been doing this work for a long time. 2026 is a special year for us. We just celebrated 50 years. We have an annual meeting for PLT Network and Leadership that just happened last month. So I got to celebrate 50 years of Project Learning Trees since it originated in 1976. We do have a website that talks about our history and how you can get involved. If you're interested, you can take another look at that. But no, we've been doing this for a while and we hope to be doing it for the next 50 years, and we'd love to do it with you. So moving on to some environmental ed resources now, I want to talk about the development of our instructional materials. So you can go ahead, next slide, please. It's a really comprehensive process, and I'm not going to go through it all, but I'm just going to let you know that I don't do it by myself. This is really my bread and butter, is the development of new materials, the modification of existing materials, looking at specific settings, places, audiences, issues, just like climate change. And it's not me and my computer just working alone. It's with a whole team of people and experts and practitioners in the field. And so this is just a snapshot of the process that we go through to make a resource available for educators. It's complicated and it can take years depending on the size of the resource, the target audience of the resource, and the extent, the length of the resource. So just wanted to give you a snapshot of our instructional materials design and development. Next. And I don't need to belabor this point either, but it really works. These are some of the awards and accolades that we've received just in the past 5 years. And since our partnership with SFI, we've been able to beautifully design these resources. Their brand is so beautiful, and it's just really helped convey the educational content as well. We do custom graphics and design, so it's really, really top notch. So we're excited to be able to share some of it with you. And here's just a quick look of some of the things I've been working on since 2020. It's a lot out there. And of course, you can find all of this at our website, all of this at our shop, all of it at our store. Much of it is also available for free. And so that's why I don't want to go into too many detail on any of these one things. But if you're interested in any particular item, I'm happy to talk to you about that in more detail at a later time. I do want to highlight the resource in the bottom right. Discover Your Urban Forest was one of the first activity collections that we launched, and we were really interested in the connection to urban forestry, to forest bathing, to meditation, to connecting to forest health, and how you can do that in the city in terms of the benefits of trees. So we're looking at updating this. That was 2020 again, so we're looking at updating it this year. So if you sign up for our newsletters or communications, we're on social media, check that out as well. Great connections to ties that Meg discussed earlier. And I want to dive into a resource we're going to be able to share with all of you. Trillions of Trees is targeting grades 3 to 5. And you can read here about our guiding question and the storyline that we really bring educators and students through. It's really about planting the right tree in the right place for the right reason. And we launched this resource in line with the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, which we're in the middle of right now. And so it's a great tie to current events. If you don't know about the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals put forth by the United Nations, many are tied to climate change, but one is specifically about climate change. So I would encourage you to check those out. So the 3 activities contained in this collection, we're going to start with Tree ID, and I'm going to use this opportunity to walk you a little bit through what a PLT structure looks like for a single lesson. So for those of you who are familiar with PLT, this should be familiar content to you, but it might look a little bit different. So we always provide background information for educators. We know that people come to this work with lots of different experience, and we always have a sidebar that dictates whether the lesson is for certain subject areas, STEM skills. We have materials listed and time considerations that are very important when planning and preparing to conduct an activity. New with SFI, we have forest facts you'll see here, and then if you can advance to the next slide, we also have a get outside portion of every single PLT activity. So ideally, we're always taking educators and youth outside to learn hands-on, but we really call it out. It often isn't written into the activity, but we add an extra component that really talks about how to connect these activities to the outdoors. As far as the procedure, you'll see it step by step going through the activity, and we have assessments available for content area standards as well. So that might not be important in your work, but it might be if you're seeing specific grade levels or field groups coming through where you need to tie to standards. Know that these are in the top right there, the ones that we connect to on a national level. All those can be available downline. Those correlations and links are available for download online at the website shared there. We also have copyright-free and downloadable student pages, which is the next slide. They're always outlined with this orange color, and again, you can download them right on our website. So it's great. These are worksheets for student use that are student-facing that you can print and put on clipboards and take out into the field. Each and every one of them have a career corner so that we're always going back to careers and career links. A quick and dirty tool I wanted to share with you. In terms of trillions of trees, we have the sample tree ID worksheet included in the resource, and we talk about how to create one of these. But if you wanted to take just a moment to scan the QR code on your phone or use the short link in the chat, you can see a lot of our professional development experiences. Ideally, they're conducted with educators in person, but lately, and especially since a little thing we like to call COVID-19, we've had to transition a lot of those opportunities to online, just like the webinar we're doing today. So this is just a little snapshot of something you can do to engage students. It's a quick matching activity where you're looking at tree characteristics and pictures and matching them up with the name. So this was a free resource. I just found it. I put together this week to be able to share with you. You can use it, share it, modify it yourself. Next slide. We want to be able to share with you this full resource. I think it's about 50 pages in total, the 3 activities I briefly gave you an overview of. You do need to visit our shop, put this resource in your cart, and then sign out using that promo code. The capitalization does matter. If you have any problem, let me know. We're keeping it open all of May. Please share it with your friends, colleagues, your kids, teachers, anyone that you want to. We would love to get the word out. So thanks for your help in doing that. All right, moving on a little bit to forest literacy. Environmental ed was my biggest category, but forest literacy, I want to give you some resources as well. So I want to talk a little bit about forest literacy framework. This framework is developed in partnership with SFI. This is something we really wanted to do with the Sustainable Forestry Initiative as soon as PLT joined the team. So what it is, it's separated into 4 different themes, and you can see 2 of the themes there. And then with each theme has a topic and a subtopic. And so all of these different topics are delineated into 100 forest concepts that we think people should know and understand about forests. And so we also worked with the USDA Forest Service to be able to put this together. We did alignment and professional development with the state forest action plans. And again, you can navigate it through age level appropriateness. So as early as kindergarten and really going up to adult learners, you can download this at our website for free. The next slide has the URL. Perfect. You can also navigate the forest literacy framework in a number of different ways. So I already mentioned grade level, but another way you can search through these topics and the different concepts of forest literacy is through these hot topics. So you can see the ones I've highlighted here are ones that have come up on this webinar, including, of course, climate change, urban forests, and I'm going to talk about green jobs a bit more in just a second. So know there's lots of ways to navigate the resource. You can download the full PDF, but that website is also an interactive website where you can display and organize the concepts in different ways, including hot topic. Next. Okay, this is my last forest literacy resource for you. We did partner with Texas A&M last year to be able to develop a free online course where you can actually receive continuing education credits through Texas A&M. It's completely free. It takes about 2 to 4 hours to complete, we estimate, depending on your learning pace and progress, but there are 6 different modules included. They're outlined here for you, and I just highly encourage you to use it, to share it. You can learn something yourself. I certainly did, but also to be able to use it in your programming and share it with your networks. So it's available online now, and it is into perpetuity, at least for the next 5 years, until we need to, I'm sure, update it again due to changing topics and data. So please be sure to check that out. It's available to everyone. And a little bit more just on career pathways. We're shifting gears here to careers. I want to tell you about our Green Jobs Guide. Again, we first launched this a few years ago in 2019. It was something very near and dear to SFI. And so we wanted to work to be able to provide a resource specifically for secondary students and teachers really looking at green career pathways. And we're also reprinting right now. This resource is on press. We updated it. We started last year with the process, but I'm happy to say new guides are going to be available in our warehouse any day now. So they were on press in March. So the really fun thing about it is the first activity uses a personality quiz to sort of link up your profile and innate interests to green careers. And so that's kind of our first introduction to green jobs for this age group. And it's really fun. And it's a paper and pencil version in the activity collection, but we've transitioned it to a digital version as well. So we'll share that link with you. You can try the first one for free and see where you are and see how realistic it is and what you think. And then you can advance here, Meg, to the next slide where we go then to our website, where you can download more information about all the careers profiled. So in the printed guide, we outline 12 different careers when you take the personality test, but when you take it online or you visit this website here, you can download even more career profiles. So know that there's lots of things that you can do to learn about these different careers. It starts with a broad overview. It looks at the educational pathway required. It even talks about the salary range, what a day in the life might look like for this job, and where you can grow and what kind of changes you might expect to see over the course of your career if this is something you're interested in. So really valuable information. Please check it out. You can download everything for free from the link provided. One other free resource I want to share with you is we got into the business of documenting some stories. So storytelling is really important in the work that we do, and we wanted to highlight some audiences in specific that maybe felt underrepresented in green careers. So we did this amazing partnership with a group called Manners, where we put together 22 different profiles of the journeys of Black professionals in green careers. And so this is a resource, again, you can download for free from our website, but it teaches about these individuals and really shares their journey. It's very personal, it's very empowering, it's very inspiring for young people to learn about and know the circuitous journeys, right? It's not a straight path, but again, how that's okay. And that's really part of the learning journey. In Canada, Meg's in Canada, I wanted to share we have a guide to green jobs in Canada, which is Indigenous Voices, which contains Indigenous profiles in a similar way. And again, you can download that from our PLT Canada website. There is a PLT program near you. I work with headquarters with National PLT in DC primarily, but there is a PLT state program in all 50 states, and I mentioned some places internationally. So it would be great to get connected locally, and I already mentioned that you can find us on social media. We're on every platform that you have, except for I see we need to update Twitter. We're still living in the past, but we're there too. So please check us out, and if you have any questions, let me know. I mentioned the free promo code, It's All Right to Advance, thank you, for the Trillions of Trees resource, but we do have a promotion going on right now for anything you could ever want for PLT is 20% off at our whole store. If, again, you wanted to share this, if you're looking for social content, you do have to visit that unique URL with the /Earth Day to get those resources, but it's everything. And I mentioned the Journey of Black Professionals is free to download, but if you wanted to buy a copy, people still really like printed paper, and being with SFI, we really like to print things sustainably. So we are all for supporting paper products, and all of our PLT resources do carry the SFI label. So always look for that. You can take a quick picture of this slide. This is all the different links that we shared, but we are also have shared a handout which you can download that contains these as well from the resources available through the webinar.
Yeah,
And now I'm pitching it over to Meg.
Awesome. Thank you, Jackie, for providing us a well-rounded look at the full scope of not only urban forestry, but conventional forestry, forest management, and conservation, taking young folks outside, having meaningful experiences with nature, all the way up to pursuing green careers and the educators who support them. One thing that we're really excited about, as Jackie mentioned earlier in the presentation, we've gotten into the practice of telling stories and elevating leaders and young folks exploring the sector for the first time with the journeys of Black professionals, the partnership with minorities in agriculture and natural resources. It was important for us to communicate the importance of mentorship through that journey. And in a similar vein, we're now undergoing a collaboration with the International Society of Arboriculture in Star's hometown of Atlanta. So with ISA, we are cooking up an arboriculture and urban forestry career guide. More to come within the next year, but we've started to engage that field and collect the stories of arborists, urban forestry professionals, and allied professionals working in the sector. So keep an eye on that. We'll share more on social. So as we bring this time together home, I know we've thrown a lot at you, but we do have the chat if you want to go back and look at anything. But I'm curious if you would like to share one idea, one concept, one question, or one resource that you'll explore after this session. Is there an opportunity to elevate the work that you're already doing through the resources made available? Or some of these seeds that we've planted together, is there an opportunity to lead to something greater? So would love you to think about that. I know folks need a couple of moments to drop in, so take this time. And as you do, we'll start to see a fun word cloud on the screen. I'll give you folks a moment. So resources, they're free, they're there. Go get them. Printed career stories, testimonials, experiences, trillions of trees, absolutely. iTree, we didn't mention in this presentation, but we do have a guide that's available in English and en français as well, teaching with iTree. So it's most definitely part of how we can support organizations utilizing this resource. Educator workshops, that's very much part of what we do as well, and you can find out more through your state coordinator. Forest bathing, or the Japanese practice of shorin-yoku, also really important way to get people out in the forest, in contact with trees and lowering their blood pressure. Texas A&M free resource, absolutely, it's there to be used and it's digital, so really flexible for use. Awesome. Give it one more moment as folks are kind of logging in. I know people often need a bit of time, but this is fantastic to share, and we do appreciate the feedback. Good stuff. And thank you to the whole team furiously sharing links to make sure that you have access to this. So with that, that brings an end to what we have to share with you today. I guess the final ask that we have, if you have a couple of moments, we do survey folks on how they appreciated our presentation and how we've made those resources available. And we're always looking for opportunities for improvement. If you want to grab that QR code, that will take you to a 2-minute multiple choice survey that you can fill out. And you have both of our emails. We're always standing by, and just super thrilled to have a conversation with you if you'd like to chat about any of these concepts or resources at greater depth. So thank you very much. That completes it for us, and we'd be happy to take questions and continue the conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Meg and Jackie. It was great to hear about all those resources. I know I have a lot I want to go look at now too. And we would love to hear any questions that folks have hearing these presentations, things you're curious about, things you want to know more about. So please feel free to ask those questions in the Q&A, and we'll be watching for them there. But I'll start out with one. Meg, you talked about public gardens sort of sitting at the intersection of science, practice, and purpose. And I really like that, because something we're interested in is like, what's sort of the unique niche that public gardens have when we think about teaching topics like trees and urban forestry and climate change. So can you share your thoughts on maybe what advice would you give to public gardens educators who are really interested in maximizing that positionality to foster learning?
Yeah, so I think just the fantastic, with leveraging the positionality of caring for plant collections and woody plants and being that centralized hub, to respond to your comment there, I think public gardens are this nexus that actually bring folks in. Folks are looking for something to do. They're looking for a beautiful site. Many of these areas are freely accessible. Others have proactive activities. So there's already that advantage of being a convener and having that notoriety or that anchor in the community that's really important. So I think it's definitely significant to think about that and always keep that top of mind as we're inviting people to our space. As with regards to advice, I think it's always good to keep an open mind and a fresh perspective and to get out and have a second look at things. So an educator might see some value in going out into the field with their arborist or their gardener or a researcher, speaking with folks maybe specialized in guest services and the entertainment aspect of some of what public gardens do. I know in Montreal, I'm biased because it's the experience I know well. We have something called the night of evening with researchers, and kind of a more dynamic cocktail environment, connecting people in the community in another vibe, but connecting them to researchers. So I think it's always about thinking about fresh perspectives and leveraging that anchor that public gardens already have. And I don't know if Jackie has anything to add with regards to how PLT collaborates with public gardens, but if you have anything to share, by all means, go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Meg. Two things came to mind. I really like, again, highlighting our career pathways work. I think there's so many green jobs that are available, and we go straight to like our education department, right? In guarded spaces, but it's more than just that. It's your curators, it's your visitor services. I think it's really taking those opportunities to think about your guests and people you're interacting with on a day-to-day basis, and how can this lead to a career? And there are so many, but how do we make that more visible as part of the visitor experience? And then another thing I would add from the PLT side is we have resources in every state. So I highly encourage you to visit the website where you can get a state contact. And we often have tree trunks, we call them, or trunks that can be loaned out that contain materials that you need to conduct PLT activities, because we really try to make it pretty easy and accessible materials in terms of things you need to be able to facilitate Project Learning Tree. But we try to make it even easier by saying, here's a bin of stuff. If you have students coming in, that you're able to check out, one of these things. And a new thing we did just last year is we partnered with the Forest Service to create forest product exhibits. So it's this three-dimensional tree that you can loan out that talks about, it has 26 different product categories and where they come from on the tree. And so it's almost a matching game where you could match up the tree product to where it comes from on the tree. And so that's something that can be loaned out or replicated. I have files for that. So that's another opportunity that would be great for a visitor experience or an event that you're planning, and that is a resource that we have available to share.
Great. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to say thank y'all so much both for your presentations. I think that there was a lot of inspiring information there. Also a lot of actionable things that we can do as educators and just members of public garden spaces moving forward to address all of these things that we're talking about. There is a question that got thrown into the Q&A on Zoom that I'm very excited popped up. And I know that we talked about it just a little bit, but it is an iTree related question. I'm very glad that both of y'all kind of touched on the fact that Project Learning Tree does have a free and available Teaching with iTree resource. I definitely will say that Trees Atlanta made heavy use of that Teaching with iTree resource as we were designing and developing our Project Acer Place project. But the question is iTree a free program that you would recommend to other institutions? And I know that y'all touched on that a little bit, but I'm sure that it's such a great program that I think that it deserves a minute or two of some specified talking.
Well, I am wondering if there's kind of an advocacy motivation there behind it as well, because we know that for those of us following iTree, it is a collaborative agreement between the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Forest Service, and Davey Tree. And I know that there's been some concerns with regards of budget to support iTree. If that's something that you care about, I do invite you to stay in tune with what the Arbor Day Foundation and partners are sharing. I know that there have been some surveys that have gone out to engage practitioner audiences about how they're using iTree and how it's valuable. I personally, in another life, use it as a teaching resource for university students to go out and assess the trees that they're looking at and look at a dollar value. So there are freely available modules to using iTree. It can be practitioner focused, it can be educator or even younger generations or our kids focused. I don't know if Jackie would like to share anything about how we're leveraging this resource at PLT, but I know it is a precious resource in the community. And if you're not using it, please, get involved because it's fantastic to quantify the ecosystem benefits of trees and calculate communicate the value of trees.
We were really fortunate to partner with the Forest Service to be able to kind of translate the existence of this tool into something educators could use in educational settings. It's not really made for your everyday person, but an everyday person can use it and it is accessible. And so it's just, they kind of leaned on Project Learning Tree to bridge that gap. So we were happy to do that with this resource, and they were really interested in kind of elementary and middle school aged students having access to it and tinkering with it. And so that was really the goal of this curriculum. It does have, again, 3 activities again, so it's very bite-sized, it's very manageable, but it walks you through step by step. If you've never used the tool before, it talks about from initially, downloading it to how you click through to the My Tree Benefits calculator, which is a really cool tool where it really delineates the ecosystem benefits of trees. And so it's a really user-friendly resource. If you're not familiar with iTree, check it out. It really will help you get started. And glad to hear, Star, that you used it and that it helped your programming as well. I was so thrilled when I learned that you were using iTree. I said, we have the thing for you, and you already knew about it. So hooray.
We couldn't have done it without the teaching with iTree resources. It was so helpful to not have to start from scratch, and we were able to kind of take that and use it as a framework for how we're working with high schoolers. So thank you all very much for making that.
Awesome. Love those connections.
That's great. You all have shared lots of great resources for educating other educators. And I was curious to think about your own professional pathways and the work you've done and the learning that you've done in urban forestry education. Wondering if you could share some of the most valuable either professional learning resources or communities that have sort of informed your thinking and your learning about this area.
Yeah, thank you, Emily, for your question on, diverse and often nonlinear career pathways and what is some of that advice or resources or communities that we can rally around to go further in this work together. I know I have an arts degree. This was definitely not my initial career path. I was slated for law school. That didn't quite work out. And the summer job actually became the opportunity. It was that bridge into the municipal sector. I had somebody who wanted to take me on as a student, and that career grew because I had somebody who took an interest in my potential, gave me a lot of leeway to learn and make mistakes and show me a viable way forward. And it's through that I've been able to do the fantastic things that I've done and give back now as a teacher and support environmental education. Some communities that have been just priceless and immensely valuable in that journey and to help grow my network professionally and very personally is with the International Society of Arboriculture and my local chapter up here in Quebec and now Ontario. And that has been, fantastic to help translate the ISA certified arborist study guide into French. That was an important resource for me. I know up in Canada, I lean on the Canadian Urban Forest Network as well, which I think would be less relevant for this audience, but it is something free that you can sign up and log into if you ever want to hear what folks are doing up in Canada. Just PLT is something I've discovered later on in my career. Had I known earlier, definitely would have been something that a group, a community that I would have been more involved in because the resources are just seems limitless at times. Jackie, what do you think in your area? How does that line up with what you contribute?
I have a little bit different of a career trajectory. I've sort of always been in environmental education. I grew up camping and being outdoors and building tree houses, in the woods across the street. And so I first got my toes wet with a watershed education program. So I've been with Project Learning Tree for 20 years, and we also partner with Project WET in Project Wild. And so again, looking at environmental issues and climate change and other topics through these different lenses, right? Project Learning Tree is through forestry, Project Wet is through water, and then Project Wild is through wildlife. So we do collaborate and offer professional development experiences together as much as possible. I worked with a really localized watershed education program when I was in high school, and then in college in Pennsylvania, it was New York State and Ohio State. So that's how I got my start with environmental ed. And my supervisor had Project Learning Tree books on the shelf. So later I moved to Washington, D.C., and that was kind of my career trajectory. But in terms of professional development communities, it's the North American Association for Environmental Education, NAAEE.org, has an annual conference each year. They have an amazing community. They rotate every other year between in-person gathering and a virtual gathering. So they make it really accessible. There's lots of scholarships you can get to attend. Their in-person conference is coming up in October this year. I'll be there. Come find me if you're able to make it. But if not, it's a wonderful community. And just as PLT has state partners in every state, and AAEE has affiliates. So they have a state community that you can get linked up to with environmental ed resources. And a lot of them also have annual conferences, including in DC. So great community, National Science Teachers Association. If you're looking for more science resources, I'm sure you're familiar with that one as well. Those are two big ones for me.
And can I just add something to that? Because as Jackie, you're talking about conferences and getting involved in a professional network and meeting new people. I don't know why I didn't think about this before, but we also have a mentorship program through Project Learning Tree. PLT Canada kind of arranges the back end of it, but we are a fully free online binational program that links up professionals working in the sector to students and young and emerging professionals. So again, this opportunity to just learn how folks have taken on their career path. If folks know that something is possible and they hear about it and they see about it, it helps build that confidence to jump in. So we are recruiting for that, and our mentorship program runs in the fall semester of every year. So feel free to share. We're always looking for mentors, and I know some public garden professionals in the mix would be outstanding. So just another way that we can kind of convene and group these folks together.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And I think right here is right before we wrap up and kind of usher out this webinar, I think that a good question to ask both of y'all is, I know that we have a lot of educators here attending this webinar. I think that everybody feels very strongly and passionately about the concept of climate change, but I also probably know that there's a lot of educators who maybe feel intimidated or kind of nervous about publicly teaching about climate change topics. How do you think that we can best support educators who feel intimidated about climate change topics, especially using something like urban forestry concepts and initiatives as a lens to do that?
Star, I'm really glad that you asked this question, and I know it's a central focus of what the PLACCE community and the cohort is striving to do, is how to make sure that climate conversations continue to happen. And regardless of different leaders and opinions and groups, that we still find the space to have these conversations. So I took a risk in my presentation. A slip of a tongue and mentioned climate change, but I actually specifically designed my presentation to not mention climate change. And that's not to say that it doesn't exist, but there's two things that I think are valuable that could happen here. First is, how do we bring our space in the world and how we interact with green space and the built environment and natural space? How do we make that something very real, something that we can see, that we can feel, that we can hear, taste, and touch? And I think the more that we are able to create experiences where people want to get offline for a bit, get outside and see something tangible, I think that's one of those low risk entries into starting some of these conversations. Another thing, and I'm going to go out and take another risk. This is coming from a very personal context up in Canada, and I acknowledge and recognize that this may not be the same from one region to another, but I follow a group called Reclimate out of Carleton University in Ottawa, and they've linked up some amazing research by social sciences scientists in climate change that have surveyed Canadians. And even though our administration has taken a little bit of a turn as well, the majority of folks actually think that nobody's really supporting climate change advancement, or that, we're all doomed. So because people think that others think this, we actually don't have these conversations, when in reality, the research on our end shows that a lot of people care about this. So I think it's about just opening up the conversation to what we see, what we feel. Trees are an excellent vehicle to do that. And if, folks need that confidence, the last piece of advice I would say is contact your PLT state coordinator. We have professional development events with like-minded people in the same room, and that might be a good place to start to have these conversations in a safer space and grow from there.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm happy to add on just a little bit more, just from my perspective. I know a little bit about a lot of things, but I don't know a lot about any one thing. And so I think that's about the conversation that we bring to the table. Climate change can seem like this big bear, but I think it's about being really honest, and being humble with whoever you reach. That can be educators, the public, or even students. I think students really like hearing that you don't know an answer to a question. And you can say, well, how do we figure that out? And there's so many tools literally at our fingertips now that can be part of the process. And I think it's really empowering when, especially a youth, is learning alongside with an adult and figuring out something so important as a current event, or something that sparks a question in their backyard or their public garden. And so I think it's about just not being scared of that and just welcoming it as part of the educational experience, is something that I've learned as a practitioner.
Thank you so much. Yes, that's really important to hear, and great to make all these connections between the work happening at SFI and PLT and here in our public gardens education community. So thank you so much, Meg and Jackie, for taking the time to share all of these great resources and perspectives with us. We really appreciate it. And Star, thank you so much too for sharing about the work of Trees Atlanta and co-moderating this session with me. This has been lots of fun. Thank you all so much.